evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name's McKaylee. I'm with Tattered Cover Bookstore. And before I go any further with this event, I want to acknowledge what's happening right now in Boulder, Colorado. There's currently an active shooting that is happening at a local grocery store that is there. And so we want to extend all of our thoughts and prayers, as menial as some may think that that is, but we want to say that our hearts and our thoughts are with everyone in Boulder right now, being so close to Denver and being so close to our hearts. And we also just want to let you know that we completely understand and respect those who might not be able to be watching live with us tonight. You'll still be able to watch later should you want or need to. We respect the fact that that might not be your first priority tonight. And also, we just want to let the audience know that should things develop with that, we might have to take this conversation in a different direction or change what's going on with here tonight. So we thank you for understanding. We thank you for being flexible. And I just want to start off really quickly with just a moment of silence for those who are currently experiencing that right now. Thank you again for understanding and working with us on that. We really appreciate recognizing that important moment that's going on in our state at the moment. As I said, my name's McKaylee. I'm with Tattered Cover Bookstore, and I want to, again, thank you all for being here. Tattered Cover has been around for 50 years now. For those of you who may not know, we are a local independent bookstore in Denver, Colorado, in the Denver metro area, as we have many locations spread out around Colorado, including a new one that's actually going to open up later in 2020 in Westminster, Colorado, which is very exciting for that for us here. And we have our Lodo location is moving to McGregor Square in May. So those are some really amazing things to look forward to. But we wouldn't have been able to do any of that or host the event that we have here tonight or be open during the crazy year that was 2020 without your support and without the support of the local community. So thank you for continuing to do that. I want to let you know that all of our stores are currently open, save for our Lodo store, which, like I said, is in the middle of a move. So you can come in and visit us as long as you're wearing your mask over your mouth and your nose. You can come browse the shelves for about 90 minutes or so. If you want to shop online, you can do that, certainly. I like to stay in my pajamas and do that as well. You can do that at tatteredcover.com. Also on tatteredcover.com is all of our upcoming events at tatteredcover.com/event. For some of you, you may be interested in Martha Hall Kelly, whose new historical fiction Sunflower Sisters is coming out very soon, and we have her on Monday, April 5th. You might be enjoying that event. Or Jess Phoenix, who we have on March 26th, Friday, March 26th, whose new book, Misadventure, My Lessons in Science, Lava, and Life, which is fascinating, not gonna lie. But the author that we have tonight, I want to introduce in just a moment. I apologize, I forgot one thing here. I want to let you know that closed captioning is enabled for those who might need it. There's a black bar down at the bottom of the screen with a button labeled CC on it. Click that, and closed captioning is enabled should you want it or need it. And now, of course, our authors of the hour that we have here tonight. We have Laura Maylene Walter, who's going to be our main author of the event, celebrating her new book, Body of Stars. And then we have Liz Breazeale, who is going to be in conversation and moderating with her tonight. Liz is the recipient of the 2020 Creative Writing Fellowship from the National Endowment of the Arts and won the 2018 Prairie Schooner Book Prize for her fiction for her first book, Extinction Events Stories. She holds an MFA from Bowling Green State University and lives in Denver, where she teaches at Lighthouse Writers Workshop. Her work is forthcoming or has appeared in the Centennial Review, Juked, Best Small Fictions, Kenyon Review Online, Best of the Net, Hayden's Ferry Review, Fence, and others. And then Laura Maylene Walter. She's a writer and editor in Cleveland. Her writing has appeared in Poets and Writers, Kenyon Review, The Sun, Ninth Letter, The Master's Review, and many other publications. She's been a Tin House Scholar, a recipient of the Ohio Library Association Walter Rumsey's Marvin Grant, and a writer in residence at YADU, the Chautauqua Institution, and Art Army Writers. Body of Stars, what we're celebrating tonight, is her debut novel. And it is my honor tonight to welcome both Laura and Liz. And we're going to have them turn on their microphones and their cameras here. Perfect. And there's Laura. Hello, Laura.
Hi. Thanks so much for having us tonight.
Welcome, Liz.
Here I am.
Thank you both so much for being here tonight. It is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm excited for a local Denver author and a debut author. That's very exciting.
Yes,
So,
and
Laura,
I love Tattered cover. I just want to say that I visited your store in, I believe, summer of 2019, so in the before times. Liz, was that the downtown location?
It was the Lodo location, yeah.
Okay. Yes, we spent a lot of time wandering the store, buying books, checking out books, and so this is really exciting, and I can't wait until I can travel again. I will definitely be back in your store in person to check out your books.
And yes, we would love to host you for book 2 or 3 or 4, whatever is in the cards for you here. Well, I'm going to let the two of you take it away from here. I want to just remind the audience that there is a chat next to the screen that you're watching us on right now. And if you have any questions, that's where we'll be taking questions after these two have their conversation. I'll pop back in and do that. But for now, after you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Maylene. Okay, well, Laura, it's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yes. Okay, well, I guess we got introductions out of the way, but just again, I'm Liz Breazeale. I am local to Denver. I live here. And Laura is coming to us from Cleveland, Ohio. And you know what? Why don't we're here to talk about Body of Stars, Laura's beautiful book that just came out not a week ago. It's been out for a full week, so I don't know what you've been doing if you haven't read it yet. I don't know what you've been doing.
What are you waiting for?
It's been a week. I don't know why.
Put in your order at Tattered Cover and go get it.
Exactly. So Laura, why don't we start with, why don't you give us a little bit of a summary for those who might not know what Body of Stars is about? Why don't you kick it off by giving us a summary?
Sure, I'll give the really fast version. Body of Stars is set in a world where women's bodies foretell the future. So through the patterns of freckles and birthmarks and moles on the bodies of women and girls, certain future events can be predicted. Not everything, but a lot of big things. And the story surrounds a brother-sister relationship in this world. And it really grapples with issues of fate and free will, and also women's autonomy over their own bodies and also their own futures. So that's the book in a nutshell.
Great. It's a great pitch. Pick it up if you haven't yet. I'm assuming a lot of people who are watching this maybe have already, but if not, go for it. So I guess just a little bit of background on Laura and I. So just as a spoiler, we met in 2013 when we were first years at Bowling Green State University in the MFA program there. And, one of the really good things about doing this event is that I get to say a bunch of really nice things about my friend, and she can't really stop me. So that's great. But, we were both first years, and we kind of bonded, I think, initially. We were both in the fiction cohort, and it's a small cohort. There's only 5 people, in each year. And we really, I think, initially bonded over presenting a panel at the Winter Wheat conference that year. And it was about bending genres, but I don't remember much about it besides that. And so I think we kind of initially bonded over just like weird, like trying to incorporate maybe some more like science fiction or like fantasy elements into fiction, into literary fiction. And so we kind of bonded over that. And what the thing that I think that I found so inspirational about your work then and now, and also what was intimidating to me at first, is that you have such a clarity to your writing. And when you came to the MFA, like that clarity, even in your workshop drafts, was on full display. And you were such a detail-oriented writer. And that carries through, like, through Body of Stars, through this book. The thing about this book is, as you said in the summary, it's set in a world that is not our own. It's a speculative literary fiction book. And so with that comes sort of the challenges of building a whole new world, and being able to sort of bring the reader into that new world without being overly explainy, because your narrator would not feel the need to explain that. This is just her world where the future is predicted on her skin. So I think, all that gushing to say that the world building in this book is so engrossing and so well done, because it feels like there's a history. And it feels like we are just looking at, Celeste, the protagonist, we are just looking at her one vision of the world that she lives in. And there's a history, and feels like there's a future going forward. And it's just so full of these wonderful details. And what I want to start off with asking you is about the one thing that makes this book feel so real, and this world feel so real, is that there are texts within the text. And by that, I mean, throughout, and there are different ones throughout, but what I really want to ask you about is about the first sort of text within a textbook within a book, which is mapping the future. And if you could talk a little bit about, what mapping the future is in this world, and also talk a little bit about how these sort of illustrations that are here in the book, how they kind of came to be, and sort of, how they function.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. If you noticed me jump, it was because Cirrus has officially joined the call.
Hi, buddy.
He has been doing this more and more through my book events. So he might be here on my lap. Maybe he heard your voice, but anyway.
Hi, dumb face.
In case I get distracted, he's here. So yes, the book. First of all, it's so funny. I almost forgot that we did really bond over that workshop we presented about genre bending fiction. And it's so funny to look back on that now, and where we both ended up with our careers, and how we both, I think, write a lot of genre bending fiction. So it's really appropriate, and it's really, it's nice to look back on that and remember that's how this really brought us together as friends and as writers. But we can talk about that a lot more. So the book, as you mentioned, it is a whole world that I had to create, and this was not easy. I really had to live with it for a long time. I had to revise it a lot. And, I had to get to the point where I felt like, for myself, I did understand the entire history of the world, and even before those characters came there, and how it really works, and how that impacts the character's psychology. And so that was a long undertaking. And I had to do that to hopefully present it in a way that felt natural and real, and that wasn't too explanatory. So some of that along the way included working in excerpts from Mapping the Future, which is a guidebook in this world. I think of it as their Bible. Every household pretty much has at least one copy. There are, different editions, but it's a very authoritative text written by a panel of men. And
of course.
And so it's an old text, so it's been updated, but I mean, like a Bible, it's been around for a really long time. And so I had to think through what different parts this book would have. So it started with written portions, which are in Body of Stars. So I'll have before some chapters a short excerpt from Mapping the Future, often with guidelines of how women or girls should behave, things like that. Some of the visual elements on the smaller scale include actual diagrams of the marking patterns themselves. And this all began when I had to explain to myself how it worked. Because when I came up with this idea, I just thought, the patterns of moles foretell the future. And I didn't actually think what that would mean or how that would work. So that took me a while. And then what you pointed out in the beginning of the book, I can tell you exactly where I came across an idea for that. I think you were with me, Liz, and Jackie, our other friend from the MFA, Jackie.
Shout out to Jackie.
So, yes, shout out to Jackie. You were visiting me in Cleveland, and as we tend to do whenever we visit each other, we try to basically find the weirdest things that we can go out and do together. And we'll be talking about some of those later tonight. I even have pictures that maybe I'll share later.
I almost kind of think of it as like it's almost like we're trying to like out weird each other in a way with like, well, we did this in Cleveland. We went to a witchcraft museum in Cleveland, but we're going to go to an oddities expo in Kansas City. So yeah.
Exactly. And it's what a wonderful competition to be in. I mean,
Amazing.
That's really, there's no losers.
Everyone wins.
So we're in Cleveland, and this was, I don't remember how many years ago, several years ago, I don't know. And so we decided to go. There was a new oddities shop that opened up. And this is still something I don't understand about myself, why I'm really drawn to things like skulls and animal bones and all that stuff when I am almost a lifelong vegetarian. But for some reason, I like to make sure it's ethically sourced, but I'm really interested in all this stuff. Sirius is leaving. So we're in the oddity shop looking at a wide range of things on display. And there was just a box full of pages from an old book that were each in their own sleeves. And so I found this one. Now, for those of you who have seen the book or who have read the book, this will look very familiar. It's not the exact same drawing that is in Body of Stars, but it's similar. So I found this, and I didn't see it and think, oh, I want to use that for the book. I just looked at it and I thought it makes me think of my book. That was just this kind of vague feeling I had. So I immediately decided to buy it. And I also, for the record, bought a horse skeleton as well.
It's funny you say that, because on my writing
what did you buy?
I have my horse musculature.
Oh, is that the muscular system?
Yes.
Oh, you have it framed. Okay, I have not gotten that far ahead. So anyway, I ended up with this diagram, and I asked the employee at the shop where it came from, and he told me the name of an old medical book. I went home, I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. I contacted the store again, and it kind of led me on this mysterious search. And I don't know if I haven't found the exact version in the exact medical book, but it seems likely that it came from a medical book published in the early 1900s. So the only way I could access that book at the time was to go to a special collections library in a university south of Cleveland. So I went and looked at it and discovered a lot of inspiration for Mapping the Future, which is the guidebook in Body of Stars. So if you flash forward to today, I recently bought a copy of this old textbook. You can see how big it is.
It's amazing.
So it's Metacology. It is 10 volumes in one. Now there are various editions of this out there, published between about 1903 and 1912 or so. I think this is one of the older ones. And so it is just, I'm a bit obsessed with it. It has so much information. It's very big and fragile and old, so I'm going to be very careful here, but it has these, in the beginning, these amazing pull-out diagrams. I don't think I can really show it to you, but you can lift up these parts. Yeah. Here, I opened up. It's so heavy. I have to do like arm workouts.
That thing is huge.
It is, yeah, and it's really delicate. So I'm going to put it down. But the most amazing part, I think, is all the information about women and women's health and how women should behave and how women should be in a marriage and how women should be sexually, like all of this stuff. It is darkly fascinating, very much so. And I had already been working on Mapping the Future before I looked through this book. So I already had kind of the bare bones of it down. But this was just another layer of inspiration of having this, text from a long time ago, written by men about women and how women should be. And as a modern woman, it's horrifying to look at.
Sure, of course.
Yes. So that was just a real treasure trove. And it just added to my understanding of the world that I was writing about, which I do picture as a regressive society, a patriarchal society. And so I never expected, when I first sat down to write Body of Stars, I never thought, oh, maybe an old medical textbook will guide me through part of this process. But that's the beauty of writing, right? That you never quite know where you'll end up.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really awesome segue into the idea, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is sort of why the pandemic has really been really hard. I know, like for my own writing, uh, which is that like so much of my writing, and I think so much of your writing comes from just going out into the world and being like, this looks interesting. I'm going to go do that. And then sort of leaving this idea of like leaving yourself open um, to sort of anything that might cross your way. And I love that you said that about that medicology book, because, you know, what if you were just so rigid in sort of your thinking about Body of Stars and like what that book would look like, that like what you never would have gone to that textbook, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I have to imagine also that this is, well, of course, we are going on tangents already, but I have to imagine that the tone of that book also lent itself to sort of, because the mapping the future excerpts, you know, like I said, there are several like texts within a text in this book, but, you know, the mapping the future excerpts are very sort of like, they're sort of ethereal in a way, and like they're very like they're very prescriptive, like it's, so I have to imagine that the tone of that book really lent itself well to imagining that book.
It did. I will say though, before I really looked through medicology, I mean, I very specifically sat down with the Bible and a Quran and read parts, especially the introductory parts, and just to get this language of this is an authoritative, holy type of text that is considered ageless in a lot of ways. And so I wanted to use that sort of tone for mapping the future. And then the medical textbook though, as well, having that, because it's written by doctors at the time, has that sort of authoritative tone as well. So I was really drawn to that. I was really interested in it. And I knew that had a place in my book's world.
Wonderful. I love it. So I think that's, well, okay. So that's a good bridge into, so you were talking about, so we went to that oddities shop together, and you know, you found this amazing, what turned out to be this amazing thing that you could put in your book. And so I think that sort of brings us to something that I think informs both of our work, which is that we are both very drawn to these sort of maybe off the beaten path, I guess, sort of like these, we like to write about weird stuff. Like both of
and
us.
I would say you have been an inspiration for me in that. And I think this is why, one of the many reasons why writers need writing friends, you know, in this hard and lonely business and work of being a writer. But also, I mean, you have your writing, for anyone out there who hasn't read Liz's story collection, Extinction Events, if you are interested in the dark or the weird, you definitely need to check it out. And, you know, you definitely have your own voice and kind of point of view with these weird things. Like we approach it from slightly different ways. And so some of the adventures we've gone on, or I now seek things out that I know are Liz things because I'm interested in them, because you've helped me. You're so excited about them. Just things like when I came out to Colorado, we went to see the dinosaur, the fossils and the footprints. I was just looking at pictures from that. When you lived in Kansas City, we went to that fabulous mummy exhibit, and that was really a highlight for me. And
how did I forget about the mummies?
You're really the writer who would write about mummies or bog bodies, which you have written about. So you're more likely to do that than me, but I have a new appreciation for it. So I don't know what a better definition of friendship is than if your friend gets you to appreciate bog bodies, but that there it is. We've gone on lots of things in Cleveland. We went to a Witchcraft museum, a Wiccan museum. We've done lots of fun things that, you know, I always view these experiences as kind of adding layers to maybe something that will impact what I write in the future. And I don't quite know what it will be. I don't have like a specific story or novel in mind from visiting that Witchcraft museum, but every weird artifact I saw there, I feel like taught me something or got me excited about strangeness in a new way. So I think that's, for writers, is so important.
I think that's great. And, I was thinking about it, and I just think that it's so important. You writing, like you said before, is such a solitary activity. We are so often just at our computers slogging away. And, it takes a lot of hard work, and like a lot of, you just sitting your ass in a chair and just getting it done. But also, writing has to be more than that, right? And it has to be more than just sitting and typing. It has to be, you're going out and doing things that are interesting. And, whatever gods are out there willing, we will be able to do that again someday. But, I was thinking, and so Laura, you actually came up with this idea that I thought was super fun. If we just both kind of came up with our top 5 kind of adventures that we've had together, because I think, for me, those sort of experiences have been so foundational to my own writing. And I think it's really just a hot tip for, anyone out there who wants to be a writer, or who, might be a newer writer. It's so important to go out and have experiences, and to sort of chase what you're interested in. And so I came up with my 5.
Yeah, let's do a rapid fire.
Let's do rapid fire. So do we each want to read our 5, and then the next person reads 5, or do we want to do, because mine are not in any order. These are just things.
Mine are kind of a mishmash. So how about you just do your 5, and then I'll quickly do my 5.
Okay, so I'm kicking myself because I forgot about the mummy exhibit, because I think I've tried to block Kansas City from my mind. But that's neither here nor there. But I'm so mad I forgot about that, because I literally have our picture on my fridge from that. But okay, so here's my 5. Well, we went to the Dittrich Museum in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Was great. Yeah,
the Museum of Contraception, which was just IUDs galore. Horrifying.
Scary old, like
horrifying.
Ancient IUD. Yeah.
Horrifying, made out of like wire and like, fishing line. I mean, and they also had all those STI posters from like the 40s.
Oh, I'll never forget the syphilis posters, for
amazing.
Sure.
Well, probably because I gave you a print of one of them, so you shouldn't forget it.
And I do just want to say, so we went there because we were drawn to, of course, a medical museum. Why would we not go to that?
Right.
But we didn't even know about the major exhibit about about contraception. And for both of us who have, feminist leanings in our writing, and like to write about women and women's control over their own bodies, and things like that, whether in the real world or in imagined worlds, that is just perfect for writers like us. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. What are your ideas?
No, I'm so glad you talked about that, because that's so true. Okay, then obviously the Oddities Expo in Kansas City, where we went to, again, shout out to Jackie. We went with her. And that, I mean, we saw some stuff.
We saw
at
some
that
things
expo. We saw some things
that we can't even contain within this very brief event.
Yeah, this is too much. We got to move on. And then going to New Orleans, and we did that nighttime tour, and also we went to that cemetery.
It was a brothel tour of New Orleans, or it was meant to be.
It was historical. It was not like we were touring brothels.
Oh yes, thank you. The history of
history of brothels.
Thank you, Liz.
Just to clarify. But it was a wonderful, what a treat. We went to the Witchcraft Museum in Cleveland. I had that on here. And then this is not so much like a place we went, but I have that on Halloween, when I visited you in Cleveland, I will do my skull after I die. So
forgot about that as well.
Yep.
Well, okay, my list cannot stand up to yours. That was glorious. I mean, if you end with someone willing their skull to the other person, I think that's a closer right there. I'll just really quickly add a few. But I'm a big fan of museums. I think I know you are too, but I know for writers, museums are they're perfect. It's
Treasure
information
trove.
organized in a certain way that tells a story.
Treasure trove.
And you can find strange things, historical things. You can learn a lot. Big fan of museums, especially the small and strange ones. And so on my list, I have, when we went to AWP in 2015, the Mustard Museum in Madison, Wisconsin. Shout out. Amazing.
Shout out to the Mustard
Love
Museum.
I had the mummy exhibit, and then quickly the day we went to the Oddities Expo in Kansas City was a banner day, because we also went to the psychiatry museum, the Glore Psychiatric Museum. Is that
yes, the Glore
also
Psychiatric
amazing
Museum in St. Joseph, Missouri. So if you're in Missouri,
yes.
give it a spin, because it is really something.
Very informative, and a lesson in human suffering and empathy for how people with mental health illness or perceived mental health illness were treated throughout history. So that was a big one. And then some of the other things I wrote down were actually not quite as dramatic, but when your book came out and we celebrated you at our MFA program at Winter Wheat, and then here in Cleveland at Brews and Prose, you were the third to last Brews and Prose night before the pandemic shut everything down.
What a bummer.
So I think I'm missing some in-person literary events. So anyway, that's just a summary, but I really do think for writers, a lot of us, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us are introverts. We like to kind of stay at home. We like to just sit at our desks and write. I'm very, very guilty of that. But there are always ways, to enrich your writing, to go out and see just really strange things. I'm a big fan of that.
Yes. And I think it also helps because I get to say nice things about my friend when we're doing this, but like, Laura, you really are you are the best person ever to text and be like, I've really gotten into, for example, cults, or I'm researching cannibalism, or whatever. You are the best person to text about that, because because you're just always on board. You're like, yeah, great, awesome. Cool.
Oh, I guess sometimes it doesn't even strike me that some people would not be into your interest in cannibalism, something I have also researched. So
you certainly have. You certainly have. Yes.
So I think the lesson is writers need to find their tribe, whatever that means for you. It might not be cannibalism for you. It might not, and that's fair.
Cannibalism isn't for everyone. What can I say?
Not for everyone.
Oh boy, that's a great pull quote from me. Cannibalism isn't for everyone. Well, that's fantastic. That's so great. What a trip down memory lane. So you and I both are very, I think, we've made the case that we are both very heavy into research when we have a story idea or a novel idea. And so you did I just want to touch on, you did a ton of research for Body of Stars, not just, reading a Bible, reading a Quran, reading the Medicology textbook, which I may steal the next time I come to Cleveland. You did a ton of research, and I know you have an essay coming out. Is it tomorrow? Okay, so
I believe tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah. So this is going to be our last question, I think, and then we'll have some audience questions. But so you did a ton of research, and you have an essay coming out tomorrow about some of that research. And also, oh God, I'm trying to cram so many things into one question.
That's okay.
And then you also have a newsletter that was basically started from your research for Body of Stars. So
yes,
all of that.
I got you. I'll try to make this quick. So I researched a lot of different things for Body of Stars. I had to research parts of philosophy like fate or free will and determinism. Definitely. For a little bit researched the physics of time just to kind of inform myself. I'm thinking about the future and future telling. A lot of these concepts were, I just kind of scratched the surface to get an understanding. But some of my more interesting research was in person. And so one thing I did several years ago I was teaching at the Chautauqua Institution, which is in Western New
Mhm.
York, and only about 25 minutes away from there is a small community called Lilydale. It's
Mhm.
a spiritualist community. It is kind of this gated community. They open up for big programs in the summer in non-pandemic years. And spiritualism is the belief of talking to the dead. So spiritualist, you can pay someone at Lilydale and they will claim to connect to your dead relative and pass along messages. And there's more to it. There's more to Lilydale. They have workshops. It's like a religious community. There's a lot going on. But I stopped there because it reminded me of Body of Stars. So Body of Stars is set in a world where people can foretell the future. And in my protagonist city, there's a district called the Interpretation District. And it's just a place where a lot of the interpreters of the future congregate. That's where they live, where they work.
Right.
So it's kind of this small little network of interpreters.
Mhm.
And even though Lilydale is a very different place, it does different things. It made me think of my book, of another small kind of closed community full of professionals who are doing something or claiming to do something that is kind of mystical and unreal and a little bit of magic, right?
Yes.
So I went to Lilydale and I got a reading from a spiritualist medium who told me some things. She, my mother passed away many years ago and she did bring up my mother. Now I am a very skeptical person,
Right.
and I'll share more in the essay about how I truly felt about the
Right.
whole experience and my real thoughts about it. But to walk into a place, and I was just trying to pretending I was walking into my novel, like this is where the interpreters would be, this is where they would be working. That was just really fascinating to me, and it was informative. So that was a bit of in-person fun research.
Yeah.
And then it ties in. We're gonna move on to audience questions, but to answer the second part of your question, Liz, it ties in. I ended up starting a free newsletter every month where I take adventures that I approach as a skeptical person, but I do it for fun and to see what happens. So I've done past life regression. That will be my next dispatch. I've had a group aura reading over Zoom. I've talked with a ghost whisperer over Zoom who claimed I have a 30-year-old dead man who comes around my house sometimes. I don't know. So I've done things like that and I've written about them. And for me, it's just super fun and interesting. And, it's not boring to sit through a Zoom whisperer session on a Friday night during the pandemic. So I'll end right there.
I will plug Laura's newsletter. It is very fun to read.
Thanks, Liz.
Now, because I'm sitting here like, okay, where's your Choose podcast about all the crazy and like ranking them or sharing your adventures? Because all I wanted to do was just follow you two around with like
go. You would be in for something.
It's sometimes it's so wonderful when we have friends that are in conversation with one another. It brings a certain level to it that you don't always get. And so I find that insight wonderful. And the fact that both of you are writers and you have that history is so great. I have to ask about your adventures together and your importance of female friendships as well, being such feminist leaning in your writing. What do female friendships mean, and how do you both try and portray that in your books as well? And I promise, audience, we're going to get to your questions too. This one I couldn't help but ask because it was so prevalent between the two of you as you were talking.
Yeah, I'll let you start, Liz.
Oh God, I was just going to say I'll let you start.
Oh, it looked like you were ready to go.
That is interesting. So, oh God, I mean, I think for me, my female friendship, where do I even start? I think for me, I think going into the MFA for me, I was in a real precarious place in my life. And so I would honestly categorize, my female friendships, both, with Laura, with our other friend, Jackie, shout out to Jackie, and with other friends that we made in the MFA and friends that I've made since. I would categorize those as being life-saving because of, it is just, we live in a country that hates women and shows that constantly. And having those support networks is so important for women. And it is so important. And I personally, I would be nowhere without those friendships. And for me, it's important to portray that in writing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, um, it's such an ingrained part of my life having strong female friendships, whether with other writers or non-writers, that it almost seems strange to talk about why it matters, because it's just part of my life and what I need. In my book, in Body of Stars, it surrounds a brother-sister relationship in terms of the family relationship. I have older brothers. I don't have sisters. It's definitely not based on my brothers, but I was informed by my own life growing up with two older brothers. And I was recently telling another friend that I've always wished I had a sister, and I just thought, and she seemed surprised and said, why? Which I thought was really strange. I just assumed every person without a sister wishes they had a sister. And I thought about it and I thought, the fact that I never did have a sister and I always wanted one, maybe that is what led me to seek out so many strong female friendships, and those have become so meaningful to me. And so even in Body of Stars, it's about a brother and a sister, but there are a lot of other women in the book, young women who are really important to my character, Celeste. Her old friends from school, she meets new women in some different contexts, some which are difficult. And I mean, that was also a no-brainer for me, that especially in the book, which has a lot of really kind of female empowerment themes, her having a lot of different connections with other strong young women was important.
It's vital. It's wonderful to hear both of you talk about. And so some of you have already been active in the chat. I encourage you to continue doing that, passing along the compliments, as well as asking some questions for both of our authors here tonight. So this is a really interesting one. Going back to your MFA days, what was beneficial about getting an MFA, and do you recommend it to others?
You go, Laura. We're both waiting for each other. We're both so polite.
Liz started before, so Laura, you can
start. Well, and I think this might be good because Liz and I came to the MFA at slightly different times of our lives. And so I came to the MFA, between undergrad and the MFA, I had worked for, I don't know, about 10 years or so. And so I had jobs in the nonprofit sector, and I also was a journalist for a trade magazine. So I had these professional jobs, and I was ready to kind of take a break for 2 years and to get into an MFA and write. And so I had already published some things in smaller venues, and I knew I needed more time and work to kind of take my writing to the next level. And so the MFA was incredibly helpful. Of course, I met Liz there and other people there that were helpful, taking the time to focus on my writing for 2 years to really learn. Even though I wasn't a brand new writer, I had a lot to learn, as I still do. So that was really helpful. And one thing that surprised me about the MFA is I went into it knowing that this is not a degree that you can come out of it expecting to get a job with it. Like, it's just not. Like, you got to be realistic. I was so realistic that I surprised myself by how much professional value I got out of it. That's when I first started to teach, first started to lead workshops. I mean, really, if I look back, it has prepared me for this book launch of being able to talk to people and lead workshops. So it did have a big professional component. With that said, I would recommend people do it if they can and if they are serious about writing, but you don't need to. I don't think any writer should feel that they have to, or that they're a lesser writer if they don't, because you can do all of this on your own if you are determined and tenacious.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think you need an MFA, to be a writer or to be a successful writer. But so like Laura said, we came to the MFA at different points in our lives. And through the MFA, that was a really pivotal point in my life for me. And I learned a lot about sort of who I am as a person. I came straight out of the MFA, or came straight to the MFA out of undergrad. Pretty much. I took a semester off, but I look back on myself and I was young. I was quite young. And, forging the female friendships that I did at that pivotal point in my life, I think has it helped me realize who I am, not just as a person, but as a writer. And I think just having that time, having 2 years to focus on my writing, where I was just thinking about writing and just thinking about reading and reading other people's work. And that first year, all I did was learn and absorb, because everyone else was more experienced than me and everyone else knew more than me. So I just, you know, I recommend an MFA if I echo what Laura said. I recommend an MFA if you could do it, because it is just, it can be such a seminal experience in your life. Yeah.
No, thank you both for those responses. And it's good to know, especially being able to come at it from two different places in your life. You're talking to two different audiences there that might relate to it, or someone maybe might be in the middle or considering. So thank you for that. Laura, this question specifically for you. Curious about the original seed for Body of Stars. Was there a specific moment or event or inspiration that got the story started? And I know you mentioned this a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate or talk about a specific moment that really drove home this story for you.
Yeah, so I don't know how common this is for writers to know the exact moment, place, and time that they came up with the idea, but I do.
Not common.
I was at a writing conference and a number of years ago, and I was taking a craft class, just a one-session craft class, and we were reading Amy Bender's work, her short stories. I love Amy Bender. I think she's great. And we were asked as a writing exercise, take the next 10 to 20 minutes to write a speculative premise of your own involving the body in some way. And I had no expectations. I didn't really think I was even going to come up with anything, but I looked down at my arm, at the moles on my arm, and I just thought, what if the pattern of those moles could predict the future? I don't know where this came from, but it did. And so I started writing, and really, this wasn't the first time I tried to write a novel, but I just started to write, not, thinking this would be anything. And I created the first few paragraphs of Body of Stars, more or less. And I created Celeste and her brother Miles and two of her friends. I mean, all in that like 10 to 15 minute writing exercise. So, and of course, I didn't know at the time it would become my first novel. I had no idea what I was in store for, but I knew I had an idea that I was really interested in. And it always comes down to a gut thing if I think it'll be a story or a novel. And I just knew, I was like, this is bigger than a story. And so I think I knew from that first day, like, well, I have to follow this now. Like, I knew it would be a lot of work and a lot of effort, but I was like, I'm in it now. And so here I am. So I'm really glad I put all the work and the time in, for sure.
So are we. Are you kidding? I'm sure that Liz can agree that audience is very excited for this book, and we're grateful that you did put in that time. Speaking of time, I hate the idea of ending this at all. And I say that truthfully because I mean it. I just want more stories from the two of you of these crazy adventures. But we like to end here with a question at Tattered Cover that really can be interpreted however you like. And it's for both of you. And Liz, I'd like to start with you first as the reader and of Body of Stars.
Sure.
And Laura as the writer of Body of Stars. But what did this book teach you? And you can take that however you like. But I'd love it if you could start, and we'll end with our author of the hour here.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective on this book because, Laura did start this before we were in the MFA together. And then I think it was like maybe 2014, I read a draft of it, of what would become Body of Stars. Maybe around then, I don't remember. Maybe 2015, who cares? But so I think when I was reading the book as it is now, it really taught me. I mean, I don't know what hasn't this book taught me, because I've watched it go from something that I think might have been titled differently. I think it was titled, you and Huda in your conversation, Constellations for Girls. I think that maybe what it was called the first time I
which is just so wrong. It's not the title. Yeah.
But I mean, what hasn't this book taught me? It has taught me, persistence. It has taught me, drive. It has taught me that, the gut feeling that you have about your work as a writer, you should chase that. It's taught me how to revise. It's taught me how to look at my work critically, and revise it as such. It has taught me it, when I was rereading it in its final form, I got so moved because I think Laura, I think I told you this, but I cried multiple times when I read it, just because it is so gorgeous, and it is such a testament to you as a writer, but also you as a person. And I think it has taught me, it's taught me so much as a writer, that 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 chasing your idea is so important, because look what can happen when you do. Look what happens when you do.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Laura?
Wow. Well, that's hard to follow. Thank you, Liz. For everyone out there watching, I really recommend put in the work to publish a book and then have your friend in a public event say how great you are. That's wonderful. Thanks, Liz.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
I mean, this book has taught me a lot about revision, a lot about persistence, a lot about believing in your work through the self-doubt and the self-loathing, which will be there if you're a writer trying to publish a novel, for sure. It has taught me that I don't want to see the future. I wouldn't want to know. It has taught me that I'm really strangely interested in writing about things I don't believe in, like being able to predict the future. And it has just taught me, I knew persistence before this book. I did as a writer, but it has taken that to a new level. And it has, I think, on a broader scale, just, it's so hard to write a book. It's harder to publish a book. And there are no guarantees, no matter how great of a writer you are, frankly, there's no guarantees that it will happen. But it has taught me, like, I've been trying to be a writer and I've wanted to publish novels for as long as I could remember. And, it took me a while. It took me longer than I expected. And I didn't give up. I was really stubborn about it. And this was what I legitimately was interested in and that I cared about. And so it did show me, it was hopeful in that way, that if you can go through a lot of rejection, a lot of uncertainty, but if you really, really hang in there in the long haul in some way, who knows what that way will manifest as, but hopefully you can make something happen for your book or for yourself. So it's been a hopeful journey in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. Thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation. Thank you, Laura, for this book. I have no doubt that people are going to thoroughly enjoy it. I know it's only been out in the world a week, but hopefully people will start to continue to pick it up and read it and share it with other female friends. Doesn't matter. If female, anybody can read it.
Everyone. Yeah, it's not just for female friends, although we welcome that.
And so the book that we're talking about is Body of Stars by Laura Maylene Walter. And we really encourage you guys to get on tatteredcover.com and purchase it. You can also purchase Liz's book as well at tatteredcover.com. And I want to give each of you a chance to remind people who you are, where they can find you online, and anything else that you want to say. Liz, any other compliments you want to give Laura?
No, I can't take any more. It's
all the
much.
compliments. All the compliments. I want to make her cry.
Liz, you go first.
Oh God. Okay. Okay. Well, my website is lizbreazeale.com. I think on Twitter I'm at Liz Breazeale, and I think on Instagram I'm at L Breazeale. I want to say I don't tweet a lot.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Laura Dog, go.
And I am on, you can find me online. My website is laurameylenewalter.com. And there's lots of links to all sorts of things there and where you can get the book. But of course you can get it at Tattered Cover or buy another book from Tattered Cover. If you don't live there like I don't, you can go on their website and have it shipped to you, which is what I did today. But I'm also on Twitter at Laura Maylene, and Instagram, the same thing, at Laura Maylene. And if you go to like my website or one of these places, you can find my newsletter, which is where I go on all those crazy adventures. So if you want to follow along and join me, please do.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned that again, because I was gonna, when this ended, I was gonna be like, Laura, your newsletter.
The newsletter is good. It's good.
Well, and I'm McKaylee from Tattered Cover Bookstore. And once again, you can order online with us at tatteredcover.com if you're not in the Denver metro area, but feel free to stop in at one of our locations here as well. For some of you, it may be a late dinner or an early dinner, depending on what coast you're on, but please think about shopping locally and ordering from a local mom and pop shop. We would not be here through 2020 without you. Thank you all again for joining us for this event. Get your copies of Body of Stars today. And Laura, Liz, if you'll just hang out while I finish out here. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. We have so many more events at tatteredcover.com/event, and you can check all of those out with us. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
And we're